Good morning to everyone. It is 9 a.m. We will open our meeting by calling it to order. And if you would join me as I provide an invocation. Heavenly Father, we thank you for an opportunity to gather together again today to conduct the business of this agency. We pray that you would guide us with wisdom and patience, help us to be sensitive to the needs of those whom we serve here in Ottawa County. Thank you for the staff and those who lead the organization administratively. Give them wisdom as well as they conduct their business. We ask this in the name of Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Would you join me if you're able to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We call your attention to our mission and vision statement. We don't read these every meeting, but we do take them to heart, and hopefully you have a copy on the agenda items that are presented to you. We are opening the meeting with public comment this morning. If anyone would like to address us, please state your name and your residence, please. Do we, are you gonna speak to these, Paul? We have anyone online, Amanda? Then we'll move to our order of business today. For approval of the agenda, I would like to add one item under item 12, new business. After the items listed, add a discussion of committee assignments that I will present. And with that change, would anyone like to make an emotion?
Move. Support.
Any other discussion on the agenda? All those in favor of the motion respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All the same sign. Next item is the consent items. We have listed here several items, the minutes of the last meeting, the service contracts that were presented by the Finance Committee for approval, the new service contracts by the same committee, and the May financial statement for your information. Any motion to approve those?
So moved.
Any discussion? Anyone wish to remove anything from the consent items? If not, it's a roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Savage?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, motion carries. The next item is committee reports. Finance Committee, Bonnie, you have a report for us?
Yes, we met on Monday, had a productive meeting again, of course. And we started out with a presentation by Olivia Martin on, she showed us the dashboard on Medicaid spend downs, and it was really informative. And I believe that handout is with the packet, wasn't it, today? I think so. It's for sure with the finance packet, if you want to look it up. It was very interesting. Just really thankful for the watchful eye that people are keeping on that whole issue of Medicaid spend downs. And then we went to standing updates, the CCBHC oversight. Of course, delays are always an issue with creating the operational challenges that the organization deals with. And those metrics are being looked at regularly too, and the dashboard has been very helpful with that as well. keeping a special eye on that quality bonus payment criteria. And remember, last year we did receive that. It was substantial, so we're trying to go for that again. Then looking at authority transition review. Yeah, there's a lot going on. Probably one of the things, looking at some administrative savings through the positions that we will now be hiring. Don't know exactly where that is yet, but we know there will be some savings through that. And just things seem to be moving along smoothly. I think Michael will do a little bit more in his report. And then deficit reduction plan update. This was quite a big discussion in our committee. Looking at the enhanced safety expenditures, you remember Dr. Brashears presented to the LRE information on level of care and how the support going along with level of care should be adequate to support the needs of those people who are served. And the LRE has been, supportive of the concept. But when it comes down to kind of the bottom line for some of the members of the LRE, and I would say probably, I might be wrong here, but I think Network 180 and we are the most impacted by this. That is having some residents who need such a high level of service that we are not getting adequate reimbursement. And this is not a new thing. This is something that has been ongoing, but it's creating a deficit. And those general fund dollars are not just available. So on where we landed on that, our committee decided to make a motion for Dr. Brashears to submit a formal written request to the LRE regarding these issues identified here. And we recognize we didn't need to do that. He has the authority to do that without our finance committee, but we just wanted to support and back the good work that has already occurred and hopefully move the needle on that a little bit so that that funding can be, it's got to be some probably other source, but we need our LRE to walk with us through that. Under new business, the contracts, there were 6 amended, 1 renewed and three new that you already looked at and approved. And we had a great review of our financial statement. It's always good when you can ask Nick are you seeing anything that's a huge red light? And he says, no. So right now, that's all good. And then Diane presented some information on the LRE FSR. So that too is concerning in that the LRE will be able to, I think, maintain for this year the costs that are over and above, but that is not sustainable. So there really are some issues financially, as we know, but particularly with the LRE that are going to have to be dealt with in order to be financially solvent. And I think that's about the best summary I can do for now. If anyone wants to add, we had great discussion. We talked through a lot of things. Anything else, you guys? Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. The next item on the agenda is our CEO's report. Michael, you are up.
Yeah, some things here this morning. You may notice that I'm growing a beard. I won't shave it until I can get an audience with the state and the region to address our funding issue. So hopefully it doesn't go down to here by the time we have it, but that's what's going on there. Now I have a issue that I have to go out, but I decided to link my beard growing to solving some of our revenue issues, and I hope to have shave it soon. Okay.
So when No Shave November gets here.
Yeah, and if it's that way, it's gonna be interesting, but yeah.
So
So
you don't look like ZZ Top before, so.
So some state issues that came up. There's been a new appointment to the acting director for MDHHS, Amy Epke. is now effectively taking over that department as the former director is leaving in July. So just note that, that's there. Elizabeth Hartel had been in the job since 2021. You know, she had to deal with a lot of different various issues. You know, there were real challenges in our system. There is real reform that is needed. And even though people may have disagreed with the method and some of the proposals that she was doing, I know the CMH system did disagree. I will say it takes courage to do things in the spite of scrutiny. So we wish her well. I hope that she does well in her next endeavor. And the new person that's taking over has been a longstanding employee at the state in the finance department. And I will tell you, we've already at Ottawa County seen a little bit of a difference. We've been trying in our authority status endeavor to get the state to acknowledge that we're going to become an authority and approve our plan to start our plan in October. Because if state doesn't respond, we can't become an authority officially until the end of February when the county commissioners last year voted. Well, we've already got a response from acting director a couple of days in saying she's aware of our issue. Her staff will look into it and we'll get a response forthcoming. That's the only communication we've gotten from the department on our authority status. And I'm telling you, Administrator Waterman, Deputy Administrator Bryan, our legal counsel, our lobbyists have been hounding the department for months. So Amy Epke responded already via email, and we had to double check if it was real, that it was spam. So in terms of an authority update, that's one of the major things that is going to help us with our plan. So, you know, there's that update. In the finance packet, and if you have a chance, watch the discussion that we had related to the budget deficit. And I will say that I had reported some numbers in that particular committee that I've put in this report. And I want to let you know, we're still looking into them because I had reported that our autism services was over budget by close to 900,000. Well, with further review, we actually had reduced the budget for that, substantially moved it somewhere else. So we're looking into that and the principles of when we move a budget item from one area to another and a more consistent process of awareness and approval. And Myra, our new CFO, have already met with finance and we're going through that. So that particular issue actually might not, and that'd be good news, by the way, that autism services isn't over budget by that much. But we will look at the utilization to see if that's increasing. We actually have plans due to a regional effort to have uniform guidelines for autism services. That is an initiative several board meetings ago. I let you know that we as CEOs, and I was really leading the charge to get this done, to get uniform guidelines from the region on number of items, residential services, CLS services, and autism, and to get some direction on self-directed care. So those things are major issues that can tackle the majority of the stuff that we're still seeing an increase in utilization. Specialized residential services has an increase there, and that's the combination of some rate increases that we did, up to 10%, and an increase in utilization. We had budgeted for this year 15% increase in new residential placements, and it's above that. And I want to alert the board that I am very concerned about the age of our guardians and their ability to maintain their loved ones with incredible amounts of supports in their homes. And we are already looking at future need for residential services and a cost analysis with that. We use a very robust criteria before we authorize residential services. It's not simply, yeah, I want residential services. We go through a decision tree that we created 2 years ago, a very robust criteria. But the one variable that you can't control is the inability of the caregiver to continue. So we're constantly working with that, and we have families, mental health families, folks with IDD and autism, that it's getting a challenge. I was given some research by one of our providers, Krista Mesa, gave me this research article that demonstrates that the average age of a guardian or caregiver in Michigan is literally close to the late 70s. And so within 5 or 6 years, we're going to see even more of that. The average age of the clients in terms of lifespan has gone from 70 to 79, right? So people are getting older, caregiver supports are getting older, resources are getting, well, not necessarily smaller, the same, but not keeping up with the increase of utilization.
So question on that. So if you have a parent who's in their 70s or 80s and they're not necessarily physically able to provide care for that client anymore, do they have an off-ramp mechanism to say, I can't do this? Because what we've seen in the foster care space or the kinship care space, when you serve as a guardian for like a grandson or granddaughter, there's cases where the only really way to get out of it is to willingly take a neglect charge, which puts you on
Give your
the
kid up.
child abuse registry, which is a huge problem. So I'm wondering if there's something similar, if there's a similar issue, or if they have a process that they can go and say, I'm not physically capable
Yeah.
of doing this anymore.
Well, the process, it's a very good question. There's a couple of different off-ramps. One is if the system's working correctly, there's an honest discussion between, say, CMH and that guardian, and a plan is set up based on reasonable resources. And in Ottawa, I will tell you, it's hard to find, it's the capacity. We're always trying to build capacity. That's a hard thing, so there's a wait. That's why we've seen an increase in utilization beyond 15%, because we're dealing with that issue the best we can and not perfectly with families in that situation. There are instances, though, that folks are literally just saying, I can't do anymore. Somebody has to come pick this person up, right? It's not the same thing as like, okay, I'm going to turn my loved one over to the state, because these are adults we're talking about, right? But it can feel like that to some caregivers when there's no options. And so I think that we have a process that tries to address that early. But frankly, just to be completely honest and transparent to everybody watching into this board, there's not enough resources. And we are actually, one of the major causes are our increase in deficit is this issue, not solely. It supports to keep people in the home, and it supports to adequately fund people not being in the home. And Director, I'll tell you, I'm very concerned that at the current trajectory with the current group of people that we have in, say, IDD adult services or our most severe in the mentally ill side, I'm estimating by 2030 that 60% of everybody we serve, if the trend continues, will be in a residential setting or setting like that. And that's just a trending that I'm verifying across the state. And we need reform. We need reform to move towards a needs-based model of funding the system. And I'll be blunt, if the PHP system can't do it, we need the state to make people do it. Because without a needs-based model of funding based on the need with agreed upon definitions of need, Ottawa County will be in a severe disadvantage. And I think we're seeing this across the state. And I think there's a lot of criticism about why doesn't the money follow the person in a real way? I'm a supporter of the current structure, but reform within it, and we need it. This region pays us simply based on the number of Medicaid lives. We have the 7th largest county by population in the state of Michigan, and we probably rank out of 46, 28th, 29th in CMH funding. So this issue is tied to fundamentally other issues. And this isn't just residential. We got many families that we can't even get enough CLS workers because we can't pay them enough and attract them to Ottawa County. It's expensive to live here. So no, people don't have to give up their loved one, but it feels like it and I'm just telling you, there are a lot of families that have been hanging in there, and they're in their 80s. You remember, to this board, we had somebody come 91 years old and said, I can't do it anymore. Right? So we're increasing our ability and strengthening to identify that. And it's not just on the intellectual and developmentally disability side. It's on the mental health side too, that you have this issue. It's the primary cause of our increase in expenditures is residential services and supports to keep people in the community. It's not traditional therapy. It's not psychiatry. It's not massive increases to staff at CMH, even though there has been increases and we have increased our expenditures there, but not to the degree that would be without being in the realm of what I would call appropriate. So I know I went on there a little bit because this issue is directly related. People feel like I don't have a choice. And when you get into your 80s, 70s, 80s, you know, it's difficult. So we will be continuing to monitor this issue, work with our partners. It wasn't in my report, but I sent all of you, I think it was a 10-page position paper I wrote to serve as the foundation to start aggressively saying, it's my belief that the needs-based funding model, or a hybrid of kind of like the number of Medicaid lives and the needs of the client, is actually not only necessary, but it's the only model that actually fulfills the guidelines related to person-centered planning and self-directed care, and federal guidelines to make sure that budgeting and expenditures are based on a person's need. The state already recognizes this. MDHHS and their mental health framework and other movements, we got to get more to needs-based, you know, a model with that. And there are certain regions, ours included, where we as the CEOs, not the regional staff, we as the CEOs in the past voted unanimously, except for one no vote, which was Network 180, to move to this model of just funding us with Medicaid alone. You will read that paper, and I put a summary on it because I get a little detailed in the thing, that basically says, I don't think that a model that funds you straight on Medicaid lives alone is actually compliant. I intend to bring this to the state and to the region. I've already sent Mary, based on the finance, Mary Dumas, CEO of the region, based on the finance committee's support, that we do an examination. I know that Bob Davis that sits on that board and Dave Parnham that sits on that board, we put in a request months ago to have them do an evaluation on needs-based. They said they would do it. We haven't had a progress report on it. All I want to know is what would that change for Ottawa County and Kent County and more importantly, the people that we serve. So on the funding issue, that was a little lengthy, but all of these issues are connected because it's my belief, besides some of the changes we've tried to do, the core systemic issue in our deficit is that we simply don't have a system that reimburses us based on legitimate, reasonable, and agreed upon needs. I'll remind this board that the Lakeshore Regional entity also came up with the residential framework to evaluate this issue. It looked very similar to ours. And it demonstrated that there's a need for more revenue. We just need, and it demonstrated that there are people in the rates that we're providing and the supports, we're not adequately funding it in all cases. Some cases, the rate would go down, some would go up. I met with Bill Ward, the director of Network 182 Mondays ago, and we have said, listen, we've got to make this issue on needs-based paramount in the state. And I believe there are people at the state that understand this. And a lot of the reform that they want to do is to make sure that people get what they need. So that, if I'll take questions on that filibuster I just did for 5 minutes.
Other states that are operating this way?
Yes, Arizona being one. There are many states that have a hybrid model. In the state of Michigan, we have this with certain regions where they do a hybrid between giving the money to the CMHs based on the needs of the people and the number of lives. The state of Michigan themselves try to do that when they form the rates. It just comes to this region, it's like, oh, that's gone. You get what you get. So I just want to keep pushing towards that.
Michael, if I could comment on a few things, because you're talking multiple levels of
I know.
issues here, and some of which we'll be addressing later in the meeting.
Right.
First, we have members on the board who are primary consumers. We have members on the board who are secondary consumers, parents of individuals we serve. Those people are authorized by MDHHS to have seats on this board because they bring the perspective of people who are actively engaged in the end result of our efforts to provide services. And we can bring a perspective that not everyone might have. I can tell you that we have consumers who have been faithfully taken care of by their families at no expense to the system for many, many years. And they reach a point in their lives where they say either they can't financially continue to do that without availing themselves of legitimate Medicaid services, or they realize that the clock is ticking on their lives and they may not physically be able to continue to do what they're doing. As a system, we have two ways of approaching that. We can just ignore it until a crisis happens and be reactive, or we can be proactive in anticipating what needs might be necessary for a consumer if their family support is no longer able to take care of them. The gentleman you mentioned earlier came to us in a proactive manner, and rightly so. He was concerned about what would happen if he was no longer able to take care of his child. And we as a system stepped up to the plate and offered appropriate supports and services to take on that responsibility and provide services that were legitimately entitled under Medicaid. So as an agency, I applaud your efforts to be proactive. I think we need to, and I've said this often over the years, we need to have a marketing demand curve to anticipate future needs of our agency so that we can prepare for either providing those services, or if we don't have the resources, obtaining the resources so that when the need arises, we'll be able to do what we're mandated to do. And you're doing both, you and your staff, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, and the staff are really working hard. We've been doing a self-examination for the last 20 months, like in terms of how we authorize things, where we could be more efficient. And you'll see a lot more of an update on that next board meeting. So I'm going to give like a 2-year review since I would have been the full second year complete. But, you know, the reality of the situation is how do you plan for increased demand when revenue is not based on that?
Yeah.
Right? So our new CFO is telling me, you know, Doc, these are all good stuff, but structurally there's $5 million that we just need that increase because there isn't like low-hanging fruit that you can just stop doing the service. And so that's why there's a push for this. Now, obviously you can't put all your eggs in one basket, but it's hard to project how to prepare when there's no relationship between an increase in utilization, demand, and need in revenue in this region. No relation. And you look at next year, when you have new standards for Medicaid, right? Staying on Medicaid. And by the way, that's not for our folks that are in the disabled, age, and blind issue. It's folks on the Healthy Michigan plan they're going to be subject to these new requirements to maintain on Medicaid. And if those numbers go down, guess what? Our Medicaid revenue goes down. Hence why Vonnie was talking about our need to watch Medicaid spend downs and that. We are developing robust tools to identify the problem. Now we got to figure out how to fix the problem. If it's simply about revenue coming from the number of lives, then maybe we ought to look at the benefit to see, can the benefit be as robust in a shrinking environment, which you don't want to do that. So the only alternatives to me is a hybrid needs-based. And I'm going to be utilizing other folks around the state to support us in this endeavor. And I think even the department understands the need. So hopefully the beard doesn't grow too long until I get a credible meeting on it. But I just want to, and that's the bulk of this. There was a section on PHP procurement. When I wrote it, I forgot to put another, remember how there was the way to, the RFP to say the PHPs ought to shrink down to 3 and all that stuff, and there was a legal decision. Well, Director Duff sent me an email, it was a couple days ago, right? Right. That on the state website, there's another RFP that's listed that says PHP rebid or whatever, new RFP for August. Now, in looking into that, there were definitely plans that I understand it to have another go at this. And the process started. And so I'm not so sure if the thing that's listed on the website that says they're going to do this is going to happen or not. You know, Director Hartel is leaving in a week or two, and we're not sure what's happening, but we're keeping our eye on it. Now, the last time this happened, it was definitely a threat that we had to contend with, and there were many ways to deal with it. But I'm going to wait until I actually hear something and it's a real thing. But I wanted to highlight to you the need for that. No doubt that we need reform at the PHP level. It's my belief you can do it within the current structure with mandated reforms by the state. By the way, MDHS is our partners. So if they want something different, they can say how they want it different. And if they want to reshape, I understand that. But I'll continue to do an evaluation of what I'm learning and sending it out to you. But that's what that is. There was also just, in the budget, there's like a huge amount of money going to rural health transformation programs that listed that. Unfortunately, Ottawa County is not viewed as a rural in their definition of rural. So we're not eligible for any of that. Tell that to all the farmers in our county. But we are the 7th largest county, and we are growing more in the metropolitan area from Grand Rapids. But you even had Wayne County defined as rural in this. Okay, now I know Wayne County isn't just Detroit, I get that. But we find that a little comical over here. But that is, we're keeping an eye on that just in case there are things that change in the definition that we might be able to utilize. And so that's why I put it in there. The rest you can read. The final thing is that starting next month, one of the sections in my report is an update of a little bit more some of the internal operations of CMH. I may have, Anna doesn't know this yet, the COO talk a little bit about some operational stuff or give me a report to read. But I also want to start talking about success stories, way that we are making a difference, because it dawns on me, I pretty much come and I pretty much just say, my beard's growing, we got to do this, rah, rah, rah. But there's actually amazing work that's going on with our direct staff, with our clients, with our families. And we have to make sure that we're aware of that. Because if not, being on this board could be a very weary thing or proposition. And I know when we've had presentations where people come in and you can see the impact, it makes a difference and makes us kind of invigorated. So I'm going to make sure I do a better job including what's going well in our update, not to overly pat ourselves on the back or gush on it, but just to highlight we have an extremely important role in this community. And I want to make sure that as part of our board meetings, we cover a little bit of that as well. I think we try to do it, but I want to emphasize it more.
So shouldn't you have like a slideshow that would be, both like, this is what's going well and this is what's not going well?
Yeah,
And this
well,
could happen or this could not happen, depending on the
yeah,
direction.
yeah, I'll find many ways to present it.
Visual.
Oh, yeah, me included. I'll find many ways to present it, for sure. And I'll make sure our program presentations include a big component of this. They do a good job. They come in, this is what we do, here's the staff, here's the services and stuff. But I think it's powerful to hear one or two narratives on how this has made a difference for somebody. Like, I'm still blown away by all of our presentations when we had the YMCA come. And the person's like, now I'm no longer on medication. Now I'm no longer, I lost 30 pounds or something. And I'm like, wow, I got to learn how to do this. So the point is, it can't always just be Dr. Bashir's is storming the castle, stay tuned. So I'll make sure there's more of a balance in some of that. And I've been trying to do it, but I'm just recognizing we need to focus on what's going well as well. And the rest of my report, I can answer questions too, or that's all I intended to say.
Anyone else have any questions or comments on Michael's presentation? Okay, then we have a presentation today on the millage.
Good morning.
Morning.
This will be fairly brief because you have heard from us multiple times about the information and education campaign that we are currently doing for the millage. So in your packet, and I handed out the official printed versions of our information and education materials. So if you would like more of these, please reach out to me or Amanda or Dr. Brashears, and we'll make sure we get copies out to you. This all contains information that we've gone over here before, but it's good info about what the mental health millage has done in the community over the last 10 years and what we are proposing to do with the renewal and restoration for the upcoming 10 years. I believe, Amanda, do you have the website displayed as well? The other item that is available and easy to access is the mental health millage website. So that's if you go to miottawa.org/CMH and search millage, you'll see it there. And on that site are digital versions of the materials that we handed out. There are also several pieces of information. As you go down farther on that site, you'll see the videos that we've created. I know that there's one out there for the Y, the drop-in center, 70x7. There's several others. So, but lots of good outcomes information available for you to share with people in the community. We also wanted to just give an update on the presentations that we've been doing and have planned. So Dr. Brashears has been interviewed on WZZM. We're also looking to get him on other platforms that anybody who would like to hear him speak about the millage, we will get him there. I think you also have an interview coming up on Talk of the Town on July 9th. So please tune in for that. We've held a Did You Know series. We've presented to Community Spoke, the Lakeshore Housing Alliance, the Recovery Alliance. Last night, there was an event at Georgetown Library providing information and education about the millage. And then in July, we have some more events coming up at the Spring Lake Community Center. We're going to present to several Rotaries. But again, if there are places that you're involved with who would like to hear from us about the mental health millage, the work that we have done, we are happy to go there and tell folks about what we've done. So that was very brief. Dr. Brashears, do you have anything to add?
Just, the Friends of CMH have been very active in terms of supporting the millage effort. I mean, you see signs everywhere, events everywhere. And that's been nice to see. And I was in the supermarket the other day and they say, oh, you're Dr. B from CMH. Yeah, you have that millage coming up. I said, I can't tell you how to vote. You want to know about it? right? So I was very clear on that, but like just people are asking questions or aware of it. And so I think that the work that staff has done and friends of CMH and stuff, we're getting the message out. It's always an elusive thing still, even 10 years later. What is it? Which programs? How do I get in it? Like, so I am definitely looking for, like I told Program and Planning Committee, we're developing a millage dashboard that will be able to be public facing to the community and the board, like almost like real time ticker of people served and the services and the impact. So I'm putting the beginning framework of that done. And then definitely as new programs come on, they'll be added. Because one of the issues we had is that for the years, like, oh, that's a millage program, even though we might have said it or they would have said it. And so we have that new millage website link on our CMH page. That's something that we're going to keep enhancing and keep getting the message out because people want to know not only the programs, like, how are you spending the money? And so we're really looking at that messaging moving forward and linking it in real time so that you can see it, so that when you're asked, you can say, go to the website and I'm aware of it. So we have the beginning stages of that going and the website was good for us to have. And, you know, the COO and Chelsea have been doing Clark have been doing a good job internally on this. We've had to even educate our own staff on some of it, right? So there's a lot going on, but I appreciate the work on it. And obviously, if there are questions, we can both answer them.
Just a comment on the materials have been so helpful. Just personal note, I was asking someone about a sign and they're like, yeah, I think I'll do that, but could you tell me a little bit more? And I dropped off some of this information and she called me back and she said, give me two. I live on the corner. So, I
Right.
mean, the materials that Chelsea, Anna, and the staff have put together have been fabulous. And
Yeah.
of course, Bob's leadership has been phenomenal.
Yeah,
Absolutely the best.
I really appreciate the material and following up on what Robin was talking about. The videos really
Yeah.
are very compelling. Some people are visual. And I think the videos can be very, very helpful in regards to some things. And it's been fun.
We have more videos that will be coming out. So if you also follow us on Facebook at Community Mental Health of Ottawa County, you can keep up to date with all of our information and education on millage, but we also share a lot of information about the other activities that we are doing within our organization. Any other questions for me? Comments?
Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Okay, there is no old business today, so we'll move to the new business, a discussion on the board bylaws and the policy update.
Yeah, I can. So we had our bylaws and our board policies examined by our legal counsel, Neil Marchand. He has gone through them thoroughly, him and his staff, and made quite a bit of changes to them, obviously authority focused. Those documents have been shared with the executive committee. We're looking at that. And we're going to make recommendations for the full board to look at in July. Neil Marchand will be here at our board meeting in July to answer questions to that. And we'll have those out to you before that time, obviously. But it's some of those items, and especially the policies, haven't been looked at for quite a while. And we need to make them relevant to both authority status and, you know, just the changing times. But I've been very happy with our legal counsel's level of attention and participation to this matter. And I think, you know, so I think that you'll see that. So when you get that information in advance, if you have some questions or concerns, just go ahead and reach out directly to me. And we'll get those addressed in there. But our hope is to have them come back in July for formal review and or approval, which is several months before the authority status would have to begin, but I think that's wise instead of waiting. Yep.
Do you anticipate substantial changes beyond what we need for going to authority status? Or is it just because of authority status that we're making the change?
It's because we're going to authority status that would launch the formal review. But I think it's been a considerable amount of time since the board's actually looked at them and looked at what we've had in there. So it ended up being, oh, while we're here. Now, I have not put any items into the changes. I'm letting this happen with the attorney and then the board can look at it. I may have some recommended things that I'd like to see, but that's going to be a separate set of recommendations for your consideration. And they're not currently inserted in any of the recommended changes. And I don't have many. Some of it's like change the title of this to that, right? The real low hanging fruit. But, obviously, once you start looking at it, you kind of go, oh, I wonder if that's a good thing to look. So most of the changes are solely because of meeting the standards for an authority, which are, by the way, almost identical to meeting the standards if you're not an authority. You just have to be, aware of that. So some of the information relates to being in line with certain county policies, which we would not have to be in line with. And how,
If I
things like
could
that.
interject
Yeah.
something here, I had asked you to bring on a copy of your board handbook. I've referred to it as a policy manual. It's actually a handbook that contains policies and our bylaws. Section 1, the first page just talks about board member orientation. Then it goes into the bylaws. And what I had hoped to get today for the executive committee is your input on areas related to policy. For example, the existing bylaws refer to an executive director. We, a number of months ago, changed that title to CEO. Neil's draft did not pick up on that. So he's referring to an executive director, I believe, is what he calls the office. So one change would be to define the fact that where we're talking about an executive director, we're talking about the title of CEO, which conforms to our nomenclature. The other changes, and I marked up a number of things in what he had drafted that immediately came to mind. And if you give me a minute here, I've got too many pieces of paper. There are some issues, for example, in talking about terms. The existing term says that board members will be appointed for 3 years from April 1st of the year of appointment. So this past April, we have someone appointed to a board position. They sit as a director. But we have officers who have not been elected yet for that calendar period of time. That happens in our regular April meeting, which according to our normal schedule is the fourth Friday at the end of the month. Well, who makes decisions if a question comes up on April 10th? Do we let the existing officers still continue at that point, call a special meeting? And at that point, the new directors participate in a special board meeting to make a policy decision or whatever. Maybe we need to clarify that officers are elected at the normal April meeting, whenever that occurs, and they serve until replaced at the next regular April meeting. So there's continuity of coverage for officers until new officers are elected. It's a minor issue, but it's the sort of thing that if everybody's in agreement, we can go ahead and draft that in what we present to you for consideration. And just to clarify, The only people authorized under our existing bylaws to amend the bylaws are the full board. The executive director can't do it, the executive committee can't do it. We can collaborate and make recommendations, but it's the full board that makes a decision on the bylaws.
I, just some thoughts on that particular policy issue is, you could have a situation where you have people in leadership on the board who maybe they're at the end of their term.
Mhm.
And so they might not even be available, during the next month. So I can see where that would be needed. So I guess what I'm saying is when I look at what the Board of Commissioners do, because it's kind of similar, is we immediately have a meeting like that's not on the same pace as our regularly scheduled meetings otherwise to kick off the new year. So for us, it's the first business day after the calendar year. We'll have an organizational meeting where then we choose the officers so that there's not a gap in leadership. And so it almost sounds to me like this is the same kind of a scenario where you have people literally off the board and it could conceivably even be a board chair. And so maybe it's actually needed for us to have an early immediate meeting. It might be an extra meeting during the year then, at the beginning of the month of April. If that's when we're having board members fall off and come on, that's how you would cover that gap, I think.
My experience with another board, their transition date is January 1. And they typically didn't have their meeting until the 15th of January. And their policy was, those board members were appointed by the county commissioners, the road commission. In December, at their last December meeting, they voted on officers for the upcoming year. And they might nominate a newly appointed board member who wasn't even serving yet. So, but it raises a question. You have a lame duck board that you may have members who are leaving because they're term limited, voting on the officers for the incoming board. It was never raised as a problem.
Yeah.
But that was the way they approached that. And the reason for that was that board handled financial responsibility as of January 1st. So things had to be signed. So you had to have a valid seated officer available to do that. Any other comments on electing officers? If you have a copy of that manual in front of you, there's a discussion there on the duties and what have you. One thing that came up, if as chair, if I'm no longer able to serve for whatever reason, the vice chair takes over and conducts a meeting, as we had last month when I was away on vacation and couldn't be here. What do we do if it's a permanent situation where I could no longer serve due to health or
Right.
death or whatever? Do we have the vice chair automatically take over, or does he simply preside in the interim until a new election occurs for a new board chair? So that's a policy decision for the board to make. The way the drafts are being circulated from Neil, you would fill a vacancy for the chair at the next scheduled meeting. And for example, you could at that meeting simply say, we nominate the vice chair to take over as chair permanently, and then you vote a new vice chair.
I'm glad it's being looked at because I think there is some risk if we don't tie it up.
Yeah.
I think there are a number of options we can look at for sure, so.
Well, one new item for concern for the board is how we handle the finances of an authority. Right now, the financial responsibility is handled by the county. So the county approves contracts, the county approves payables and payroll. When we become an authority, we will have the fiduciary responsibility of handling the finances of the authority. So that means we need to set in place some standards. Neil has suggested some things that say, well, the executive director or CEO can handle contracts in the normal course of duty within the existing approved budget.
Right.
Well, do we as a board want to simply turn all of that over to the executive director and say, well, we'll let him worry about that? Or does the board, and then subsequently, let's say you sign a contract for a new electrical service with the utility. Do we want to have that wait until the next board meeting to approve it so that you can then sign it? Or do we want to give you the latitude to make those decisions, sign the contracts and present them to board for us to retroactively approve?
Are there guidelines in terms of caps on the amount of money that can be approved?
Yeah, and I intend to give many examples of what many authorities are doing to handle that, because we have 41 other ones.
Right.
So, but, I mean, this board will have to obviously be part of all those things, and you are now, right? I mean, the contracts that we renew now, there may be an extra step at the county, and there may be how it's actually ratified that's different, who signs them, right, ultimately. But we do a lot of the oversight now already as a CMH board. So the authority definitely shifts, any authority that the county had shifts down to us. And that was really on the ratification of the budget. Position control was one of the roles that the county did. So we'll look at that. And obviously auditing, all that stuff was generated by the county. That changes. And right now, the county commission chair has to sign the contracts. We have an extensive routing process. And I know when Chair Teeples was doing it, he was like, I'm an attorney and I don't like signing stuff unless I know exactly, right? So there's always been a tension of what to do with CMH contracts. And we've actually had a different process than most other departments, probably all other departments. Myra would know, she was obviously number 2 at the county in finance forever, but the point is, you're correct. Luckily, we're already doing a lot of that work now. We just have to define it, set some parameters. There are CMHs where the CEO brings the contracts and say it's information only. I don't believe in that. That's why we have a finance committee and it comes to this board for oversight. But the process of executing them in the limits of them will flush out and have you look at and make some decisions on it. So we'll have examples, like what are the other authorities doing? How are they handling that? The smaller authorities have one process, the larger have another. We can have a hybrid. And then Neil, our attorney, will say, what is the actual parameters that you have to do? How you meet the have to is really up to you.
And it could be all contracts over
That's
$5,000
right.
require prior board approval.
It's $100,000. So like Mary, sorry.
I think the county were 70.
So
And I think that, I'm sure you already are familiar with how the county works, but I think you can take a look at, how things are processed now. I feel as a board member, it's not overwhelming for me, the way that the process works. So I don't think it would be super overwhelming if we did something similar on this board. I think you're right. A lot does fall on the chair as far as signing contracts and all of that. But as a board member, it's not super overwhelming. So, but also we can improve systems. It's an opportunity to change things that need to be changed. So I'm sure,
especially the routing.
yeah, Myra might have some ideas on that too, but, yeah.
Luckily, we changed our structure to mirror almost the county. We have a finance committee, we have a program and planning committee. So doesn't the county, maybe slightly different names, that feeds into the county commissioners as a whole. We have a similar structure. So we can really learn and enhance what we want to do. And so but all of those things, I will look at different approaches that several authorities have done. I say several, my N is like 5, in different parts of the state and different sizes, to see how they're handling it.
Well, this raises a bit of a philosophical question. We are technically a policy board, and as an authority board, we would also be considered a policy board in that we don't directly engage in running the agency. We give that responsibility to our sole employee to run the agency, but we put guardrails on that. We give the director authority to operate within certain arenas. And then if we reach a point where we're going to operate beyond that, then we request that he gets prior approval from the board. One question that comes up is we have fiduciary responsibility beyond that in terms of setting policy for the agency and delivering services and how we do it. We have a fiduciary responsibility to the agency as an authority, whereas right now the county has the fiduciary responsibility of financial oversight. We inherit most of that. The county still has oversight of us as an authority in terms of if we don't do well or we don't process ourselves well, the county has the ability to come in and change the board. And I would assume the county still has some casual oversight where they can make recommendations if they think there's an area for us to improve as an authority. But with regard to fiduciary responsibility, some other independent agencies, like the Road Commission, regularly approves the bills and payroll at their meetings. Presumably, we will need to do that. We can delegate that to the Finance Committee, have the Finance Committee review the bills and payables and payroll, and make a recommendation to us as a board at our next meeting to approve them. But in effect, that's retroactively. We're paying the employees on a regular schedule. They're going to get paid during the month. At the end of the month, we'll be approving that payroll. But that's part of
The disbursement, and the region has a process that we can use that does the same thing.
But that also leads to the question of ethics for the board. I use that word as a general category. We have some policies that talk about our responsibilities as board members. There's also under section 3, I believe, we have, section 4. Here it is. It's right at the end of that board policy section. Conflict of interest disclosure statement, presumably we all signed one of these when we were appointed to the board. I don't remember having done it. I remember reading it thinking, well, that's pretty apparent, how we handle conflicts for financial interest. One of our board members rightly pointed out that it's kind of a gray area because we are appointing board members who, as a family member, will maybe benefit financially from an action that the board takes for a particular agency that's delivering services. Well, that's embedded in the DHS's philosophy of what we need for board input. So I think we handle that responsibly. If something came up that directly affected my daughter that the board took action for, unless it was for a whole class of consumers that she was part of, I would make that known to the board and maybe recuse myself from voting on it so that I wouldn't be taking action that my family individually would benefit from, as opposed to a group of our consumers. So we have those kinds of things. The other thing that's in there is the board code of conduct. And there were some items in there. Number 8, I will bring to the attention of the board any issues I believe will have significant effect on our organization and those we serve. Well, from what I understand, we probably all do that. If we see something happening that we think it's important for the board to know about, we discuss it and talk about it. We represent ourselves in the community as a board member in a unified voice and representing the organization. I think that is something that maybe we don't think about, but presumably I would assume we all agree with that. And then acknowledge conflicts of interest between my personal perspective and my position on the board, and abstain from voting or attempting to influence issues in which I am conflicted. Again, that's a matter of personal conscience. And I think it's valid to say that we as board members may have our own opinions and we have a right to express them. We like the board to speak with one voice, and if we discuss an item and vote on it, presumably we would all support it. The millage is a good example. If one of us as an individual didn't think that asking for the millage is the appropriate thing, we have a right to express that or talk about how we present the information. But once we discuss it and have a motion and approve it, we would be expected to support the board's opinion on that. So any comments from any of our board members on any of those things that need to be looked at or modified?
I guess personally, I always have a hard time when codes of ethics and conduct like constrain people who are working in government that much so that their opinions can no longer be expressed. I don't personally believe that that's right. Because I think a board member could say, for instance, the board has voted this, so this is the stand of the board, and still say, I have concerns about these areas, you know, that I don't agree with. Because I think some of that just, I don't personally believe that you ever give up your freedom of thought or freedom of speech when you're serving on a government body. And so, I don't think that we just want people, you know, serving in government who are going to set aside their brains, you know, and I don't think that serves the community well. So I don't personally believe that should be in a code of ethics. I think that as far as understanding that the board has voted and is moving forward in a direction, that's one thing, but requiring someone to set aside their ability to express themselves or their thoughts, I think that's wrong. So those are my thoughts on it. Like I find that very constraining for a board member, and I wouldn't expect anyone to comply with that, honestly. So those are my thoughts.
I would agree with Sylvia in regards to that. I think sometimes we do need to have robust discussions about things that are, you know, we're not cookie cutter here, you know? So I think it is important to do that from time to time. We do want to act kind of in a unified way around policies, but that doesn't mean we have to embrace every aspect of the policy.
Right. And I believe that we become stronger when we actually talk about our differences and wrestle through them. So, and sometimes that's even after the fact, maybe that one person who disagreed actually had some valid things to say. And so then as that policy rolls out, maybe we actually need to continue to talk about it and listen to that person. So I don't know. I just always think more brains is better. So.
That's why we have more than one person on the board.
Mhm.
Yep.
I would agree. I think, and there's a difference between serving on the board members, you know, we're like you said, Tom, we're a policy board, we set direction. It's a different role than staff, right? The staff's job is to take the board's set policy and implement it. And so there is a difference between a staff member going and saying, you know, this is what the policy is. but this is horribly wrong, and a member of the board saying that. I think staff needs to speak as one voice, and anything that we put out publicly that has the Ottawa County CMH logo on it and is of an official declaration from CMH of Ottawa County needs to be, consistent and speak with one voice, and we can't have undermining opinions on that. But I don't think that applies. Like you said, I don't think that applies to the board of directors and how it expresses opinions as individuals. So I agree.
And I think there's times, where we have disagreed on things and we have talked about them and disagreement doesn't mean that you hate somebody, or that you're gonna have a brawl or anything like that. And I think this board operates really well, and hopefully it always will, where, disagreement is respected and handled appropriately. So, anyways, I
Hope as a board,
like conversation.
I hope we haven't made any board members ever feel like they cannot express their
Right.
opinions, because that's why we are here. That's why we're diverse. That's why we have different backgrounds and
Yeah.
come to this table. So thank you.
I think that's kind of the key word, is that word of respect. And I remember in my interview, Jordan, Commissioner Berger had asked me a question about differences this past few months ago, about differences on the board and opinions. And I said, honestly, we're all going to be different because we are different. And I remember in my own board at Compassionate Heart Ministries, one of our presidents for years would say, we can all be around this table and have different opinions and ideas, but when we leave this space, we're one voice, talking to what Jordan just said, right? Like, we have to be unified and together. And that's just that element of respect that's kind of getting lost in our world. And so we can have different opinions, but we can respect each other in the right way.
If we don't provide an arena for healthy, good discussions, they're gonna take place anyway out there. And then that becomes potentially divisive. And we don't know, gosh, are they on the team or are they off the team? That kind of thing. So yeah, it's difficult if you feel like, gosh, am I the only one that thinks this is a bad idea or whatever, we have to be honest and step forward and talk about it and do our best to support the big picture of where we're headed.
So I hope we're looking at the code of ethics.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
Okay, well, we will take those comments to heart as we review this and try to propose recommendations to the board. Any other items of discussion concerning the bylaws that any of the board members think we need to focus on?
Hey, Tom, just a question on so the draft language, when would we have a chance to review that then?
And that was now if you want.
Actually, we could send out Neil's draft.
Yep. Mhm.
But just bear in mind, it's not anything that anybody on the executive committee has put their imprimatur on,
Right.
or Michael for that
Right.
matter.
It's raw, it's still raw.
It would be helpful though to generate some ideas.
Not a problem at all.
Amanda, could you send that out to everyone?
You'll have it, yeah.
Good. Okay, there are other areas that I think, the only other thing I can think of is Michael has a contract right now with the county. He is our employee. We employed him. We determined the framework of his compensation and benefits, but they were codified and authenticated by the county HR department. So assuming October 1st, we become an authority, Michael, like our other county employees, will transition over to the authority organization as employees of the authority, with their salary and benefits plan continuing at least until next February.
Yeah, that's the plan, but actually, it's my opinion, my contract is with the board. And the county has they did the functional pieces of implementing what's in it.
Mhm.
But technically, my benefits from the county are almost like a contract employee getting them. So we have Neil looking into that because I believe my status is my contract is not with the county at all. It's actually with the CMH board solely.
Mhm.
Now, the county participates in that per the mental health code definitions of that under what an agency is or a county department. But the fact the county commissioners, once a CMH contract is for the executive director or CEOs approved, the county commissioners only have 14 days from the set to say, hey, we don't know about this one, right? Once that lapses, that's not there. So we're actually looking into that because of this issue. It's my belief that I actually have a contract with CMH board and the county gives me benefits in it, but I'm not actually a county employee.
So
So
we-
there's we're looking into that nuance.
So there may be some wording necessary as an addendum to your contract,
Yeah.
recognizing that we are now an authority and you're an employee of the
Yes.
CMH board, which has changed its status to it being an authority.
Yeah.
And then doing whatever is necessary to handle the transition from the county HR department and benefits to our authority
That's right.
HR department and benefits.
That's right.
So will we have an HR committee of some
No.
sort down the road? So what's it looking like down the road?
There's not an HR committee now. All new positions are approved in the budget. And when new positions come on board, I would have to inform this board, like in the new process. You will obviously, if it changes the budget, have to change the budget. But no, you don't need an HR committee and an authority board.
For applications for employment?
So that'll all come to, yeah. Yeah, well, no, not for you guys. Yeah. And remember, our goal is to contract back to the county a lot of the services until we're able to stand them up on our own. So we're not looking for drastic changes on the front end for the employee experience. They might still have onboarding. We do a lot of the onboarding now internally at CMH now and over Hasbro, but like getting the badge and welcome to CMH. Some of that we're still working out on that. Same thing with finance and IT. Our goal is not to say, we're not using the county at all for all these things. No, we have embedded processes. So we're developing a service agreement with the county to maintain certain functions. And then over time, we're going to gradually take as much of those internally as we see would work well. So no, we would be doing a lot of the day-to-day. We already do that now. When a new employee comes to CMH, there's a county part, but internally, Amanda runs it. We all do it. There's a whole onboarding process that we do with CMH employees that the county has never done.
Will there be any change in building ownership, leases?
Well,
rents?
we're working on that right now. When a department becomes an authority, the county obviously we can stay in the buildings. In fact, this law says they can't kick you out. So if the county didn't want to keep us, they couldn't kick us out of the building. There's actual rules against that because they ran into that in 1996 when authority status first started, right? So yeah, our plan is to have lease agreements with facilities, very happy with the county facilities, based on a cost allocation plan or how much it will cost us. And all of those details have been ongoing. Rentings, they can't charge you rent if the building's paid for, so you're paying the facility cost to maintain the building, maintenance, upkeep. It's against the law for counties on a paid building to charge an authority rent. But you can call it, to run it, sure. And that's a lot of times because counties made CMHs do bonds in the past, or there were bonds for the buildings and they were paid off. So it's really technical, but our strategy is keep as much with the county as we can, and over time, what makes the most sense to be fully independent in terms of functions, IT, HR, those things. We're going to use a hybrid model, buying the services from the county, which we do now, cost allocation, ever since we've been a department. Remember, not one dime of county general fund has ever paid for any of us besides the 10% match. So we've always paid facility cost and all of that stuff through allocation. Time in HR, time in IT, time in finance. We've never had an arrangement where CMH dollars weren't used to pay 100% of those costs. So we're just transferring it into formal contracts and what makes sense, which makes it a little easier, you know. Because if there were a lot of blended funding with county general fund over the years, it would be very difficult to kind of figure out how to, in a new contract, well, what goes away and what stays. And so I like other funding sources, but in this case, it makes it a little bit neat and cleaner because we've always been paying for all of this stuff as a department with funds, as we should, to not burden the taxpayer in Ottawa County, right? So that's the methodology with that.
Just to wrap this up, if you, we'll get a copy of Neil's draft of the proposed changes out to everyone. If you have any further comments or you want to clarify or expound on positions and recommendations taken here today, send them to me and we will plan on having the executive committee meet with Michael sometime during the month so that we can present a draft document to you prior to next month's meeting and then have a discussion and hopefully action on it at the next meeting. Next item is House Bill 6022 update.
Yeah, with the permission of the chair, I think it's wise to combine the next two items together based on the previous discussion. So many weeks back, I had written a position on this particular bill that was being introduced to a subcommittee and ultimately to the legislature. And I wrote quite a lengthy opinion on it. And when I sent it out to all of you, I said we would discuss this at the next board meeting, which is now, right? But I think everybody's read the position on it. I think the more vital issue is something that was just talked about, which I appreciated. What is the role of the executive director or CEO when I decide to submit written testimony on our letterhead with my name on it without the full board sanctioning that action? So there's a difference between, I think, me giving an opinion on a bill and presenting it to you, then taking the action of, oh boy, this committee's popped up. I don't have time to kind of get everybody's commit, because I was aware of it like 2 days or 1 day before they were asking for, the board association and my peers were asking for feedback on this. And I think it introduces a very valid thing that the board can give me instruction on. So the question is, and I know, Tom, you were going to kind of lead this discussion too, I think is, I'm not going to go through this bill, you've all read it. It's really when I decide I'm going to submit something to the legislature and it's a position that I think is harmful to the organization, what is my authority or ability to do that without full board or board consent? Because I believe what was said, that that's probably a little bit different than me having an opinion and sending it to you or letting it out there. But once it gets real formal, I would like guidance on your wish as a board, and I'll operate under whatever guidance I'm given because I'm the employee of the board, right? So that I don't run into situations where board members maybe not be aware that I'm going to introduce that formally into a record and may have wanted to have more of a robust discussion about it. Because when I look at that situation, even though I felt like I could do certain things, what if half of you are like, take no position on it? Or let's keep it, let's kind of keep it going. I was feeling like I had a time constraint to do something, but I think the question is legitimate, is what do you want my role and function to be when I'm putting, I think the key is, to me, official positions into official records, like a legislative record or a subcommittee. And I think, talking to you, Tom, that's the question I want answered.
Before we open it up for discussion for the full board, let me point out there are two sets of dynamics involved. One is the ordinary course of business, and perhaps a discussion on ordinary course of business.
Sure.
Come up with one set of guidelines. The other is emergent problems. And in this case, looking at the timeline, just prior to the board meeting on the 24th, you became aware of this bill being
Sure.
proposed. And the following week was, and you, on Monday, the 26th or whatever it was, you sent out to all the board members an analysis of the impact of that.
Right.
And as I recall, you requested input and feedback from us on that.
Mhm.
So you were acting under one set of circumstances. What happened then was, on a very accelerated basis, the bill was going to be introduced the next day, and the
yeah.
question is, how do you react? So that's a different set of circumstances, and maybe our comments should be cognizant of that kind of a situation.
Yeah,
So
and,
we'll open it up
and
for
what I'm looking
comments.
for is guidance of when is it okay in me and my role? And I can, the key is submit a formal declaration of something with our letterhead on it. And I think that, to me, is the crux of it. The specific situation had some unique things to it. But to me, I come out like, gee, how would you like me to proceed in those circumstances? So.
A couple thoughts I have, is one, I feel like you're uniquely qualified to speak into some of these issues and have the ability to do it, whereas that might not be true of most CMHs or many. And so I appreciate that you do it, because I think it's acting, you're guarding for all CMHs when you do speak to things. And the system is so complex that for me to wrap my brain around implications of a piece of legislation is going to be much more difficult, than for you to. So I appreciate that you have been speaking into things. I can kind of maybe see two different scenarios. One is, if you're under a time constraint, you could still use the letterhead potentially, but say something at the end, like, due to time constraints, this opinion has not gone through board approval. So just simply inserting that line in the letter, so it's clear that it just didn't. And then on the flip side, if you do have time, to bring it before the board, then I think it's a good thing to do. And if you felt like it was needed or helpful to insert, my board has reviewed this, and is an agreement, or, you could make that differentiation of what's not board approved, what is.
So I'd like to go. I think I'm probably the impetus for this coming up. So I mean, I have pretty big concerns with how this whole thing played out in the 6-page opinion you wrote. I have significant disagreements. For context, the bill that we're discussing was introduced by my boss in Lansing. So that's kind of, how and why things played out the way they did. I'm not the one who pushes the button to vote. I'm not the one who sets the agenda. I'm not the one who decides when things are put on the agenda and who's told. That said, when I was looking at the committee record and saw, oh, there's testimony from one CMH out of 46 CMHs, and it happens to be the CMH for which I sit on the board. Didn't know that was happening. I was surprised. I was a little annoyed. And so the feeling that I didn't even get the chance to talk about the merits of the bill, which we can certainly do if this board wants to do that. I'd be happy to do that. And you sent out an analysis, and we've been very conscious of this in the county commission. When we send emails to the full board, one commissioner to the full board talking about a policy issue, that's a potential violation of the Open Meetings Act. So I don't have the ability to do so as you do. So had I even wanted to get into a policy discussion and let the whole board know my opinion in a constrained time period, I could not have done so. So in light of that, had we called a special meeting or even done a virtual poll, that's allowed under the bylaws, that would have been something that would have felt more appropriate. For the time constraint piece, the bill it's not even to the House floor yet. It was passed out of one subcommittee and was sent to another subcommittee. And that second subcommittee hasn't voted it out. So the urgency, I don't think is actually there. I think there's a reason that the 45 other CMHs did not submit testimony. The CMH Association did. They had verbal testimony. They had people up there, answered questions. It was a very robust discussion. And ultimately, the Health Policy Committee passed the bill. I mean, it's a bipartisan bill. It has Republican and Democrat co-sponsors. And it passed out of the Health Policy Committee. But again, it's not to the House floor yet. So, my concern is, do I have any problem with Michael submitting written testimony? No, if it's something that us as a board has decided, because when he speaks, he does speak with the voice of the CMH of Ottawa County. And I think staying neutral on a bill is a completely valid option, or not putting in a position. I mean, that's what 45 out of 46 CMHs did. So that's kind of the concerns that I raised. I personally don't think we even need an emergency timeline, because, I mean, working in the legislature, very, very, very few things get passed between the time we would have our first or one CMH meeting to the next CMH meeting. Almost always, and especially this term with split power, almost always there is at least a month, most of the time like 9 months or a year and a half before things really get passed. I mean, realistically. So I don't personally think it's necessary. I think clarification is good. I really value Michael's analysis. But this is one of the few instances that I have disagreements with. I would have liked a more nuanced discussion before testimony was submitted, even if it wasn't, you supporting the bill, which I'm not asking this board to submit an approval of this bill. I would ask the board probably to stay neutral or to amend some of the comments that you make, because now that's in the committee record, and that's always in the committee record and always will have been in the committee record, and we can't go back and undo that. So that's my concern. So I'd like to kind of come to some sort of agreement with what a reasonable policy is.
I have a little bit of an issue. Policies don't tell you everything, when to do, what to do. They're a guideline, to give us. And it's important to have good, clear policy. But sometimes it's like, well, does this policy really mean that or what? I think a little bit of a history we have to look at is, it is no secret that there is pressure to move towards privatization of public mental health. That's been, 30 years, 40 years. I mean, this isn't a new thing. So it's like we just got done with one, and the judge ruled we don't want to go that way, or I need more information. And so we're waiting for what's the next plan. And then all of a sudden this, in my mind, as a board member, it's part of something else. Like, what is the plan? Where is this coming from? So in my mind, Michael, as a director, kind of knows how we think about something like this. That could be viewed as a threat. You wouldn't necessarily agree with that. So, well, not all board members. I would say, I would say the majority. I would think in this situation. I don't want a director to ever feel like, I got to check with my board. I got to check with my board. I mean, if you don't have time, you don't, there's a place for judgment, and would the bulk of the people in this room right now agree with that? With what he did? Let him do his job.
I don't think there's I don't think there's a place for judgment when it comes to big policy decisions that should be made by the board. I mean, what you're saying is he should assume what we're gonna think on a position.
Because of the timing, you know, kind of thing.
Right. Well, and my point to that was 45 out of 46 CMHs made the decision not to put in a position. Why did we?
Oh, I think there's an answer to that. In terms of dynamic leadership, I think Michael represents the cream of the crop in our industry here in Michigan in terms of,
Completely agree.
well,
I didn't hear what you said.
I said I completely agree.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So I think what we saw here was an emergent threat to our organization based on a bill that was introduced that nobody understood or predicted was going to occur. And Michael immediately looked at it and said, well, wait a second, this is a problem. And he did a detailed analysis of the impact or potential impact on our agency and our industry as a whole, and circulated it. Now, the fact that most of the, or all of the other CMHs didn't respond that quickly or in that detail of a manner, I think is a credit to Michael and his capabilities and his analytical thinking, as opposed to saying, well, that's proof that we jumped the gun. And furthermore, the association jumped on what Michael did and said, whoa, this is important. We need this testimony to present. Can we do that? And they did present it at the hearing. And in fact, the association sent a letter out. The head of the association copied me as board chair on it, saying, you know, we commend what you did. You know, it was insightful, it was appropriate, and it was dynamic, and you did it. So from that standpoint, I don't think we could say the fact that the other CMHs didn't submit any testimony means that we were in the wrong. I think it points to our leadership.
It shows a different perspective because some people don't see it in one way. And he saw an outcome that could have been worse than what it is right now, that could not help people to the point that they wouldn't have what they have now. And a lot of people don't realize that. What he did was to show people what they do and how to do it. A lot of people don't realize that. And then there's some that think that why do we have this? Why is my tax so high? And then it kind of adds up all together. And some people don't want to support, but they want people to not be on the streets as well, but they don't see one view. And then when they shown that view, they now see the bigger picture, which is what Michael was doing.
So, and I have no issue with Michael having the opinion that he has on this bill. I have no issue with that whatsoever. I think what would have been very appropriate is Michael sending that analysis to this board like he did and saying, hey, I'd love feedback. We'll talk about it at our next board meeting like he did. And I wouldn't even have a problem with him sending that to the CMH Association. What I have a problem with is him submitting that as the official statement of the CMH of Ottawa County when it hasn't been discussed. So that's where I'm coming down.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so.
That's why we have an association, because if he needs to react fast, the CMH Association can react fast. They have their own process for doing so. As a specific Ottawa County CMH board, I don't think we should make policy decisions outside of the CMHA structure without having a discussion as a board first.
That's why we have to be careful on what is approved and what is not approved.
Right, and this was not approved by the board.
I would like to say one thing.
Hmm.
Sorry. Both of you used the same word when you were talking. You used the word surprised. You were surprised to see that, oh, the only person in the state that wrote anything happens to be, the board participating. Michael was surprised that there was even such a bill out there. So what could we have done in retrospect to keep each other from being surprised?
We're supporting each other.
I mean, hear me out. Jordan, could you have possibly said, hey, Michael, heads up?
Yeah, so it's
don't know.
it's a fair question. The answer to that is no.
Oh, you can't talk about it?
No, so that, like I said before, I don't set the agendas. I don't push the button. If my boss wanted to not tell the CMH Association, that is his policy decision for him to make. It would be inappropriate for me to go and tell one specific CMH if he's decided not to tell any specific CMH. So,
Well, that, yeah, I don't.
So-
You're in a tough position.
So, yeah.
sure, I grant I'm in a tough position. That's clear.
Let me,
So one thought could be, I think it probably would have been appropriate for Michael. I'm not conceding that what he did was completely inappropriate, but another option would be perhaps he could take an analysis like this and thoughts like this, even absent board approval, and send it one-on-one to a legislator and say, these are, like, after it's public that this has come out, instead of putting it on the record, he could email and send it to the legislator and just say, these are my concerns. I haven't had a chance to run it through my board yet, but these are my concerns.
Sure.
And it's not public.
And if that's where we land, I'm fine with that because this is inherently relational. I mean, serving on a board and advocacy efforts in Lansing is relational. If you have a relationship with Brad Slaw, I would never stop you from going and talking to Brad Slaw about your opinion on a bill. And I think I am more coming down to official positions. And maybe you sent an email asking for people to help get in contact with Nancy DeBoer's office.
I did, yes.
I talk to Nancy DeBoer weekly,
Yeah.
and so,
And she's never responded, by the way,
okay.
just for the record.
So, I just think we need to be careful about what we're doing in official actions. I don't want that loophole to be just send it as a letter to every legislator one-on-one. And if it's relational, if it comes up, that's fine. But I just think when it comes to policy decisions, that should come through the board. And again, I really don't see this coming up that much. But, when it does, I just think being patient, the benefit of being patient outweighs the potential harm of jumping the gun. So.
I
guess-
think it's a good reminder too, sorry. I think it's a good reminder too that the process takes a while,
yeah, that's good. Because I haven't heard any of the merits of the bill.
Right. Well, I would be happy to share them.
I'm sure you would.
But that's my point is that I was under the impression that was this
But it
discussion
is
to be
a
had
good
today.
analysis of the bill by Michael.
Sure.
But I have not heard the merits of the bill
Well-
in any way, shape or form, and it's moving to another committee.
And right, again, I would encourage you to go back and watch the testimony that's on the public record.
Okay.
They had a very robust discussion and there was great questions towards the health plans and great questions towards the CMHs. To me, there's two separate discussions here. There's
I
the
hear you.
procedural and then there's the merits of the bill. And if you want to move to the merits of the bill, I'm happy to.
I'm sure you are.
So I guess then you said you haven't seen the merits of the bill. I wouldn't have been able to send the merits of the bill to the full board
Right.
because that's an Open Meetings Act violation.
Okay, good point. Good point.
So
Dr. Brashears, what is the procedure for, as far as if any of the directors wanted to get information to be considered in a case like this to the, the overall arching agency, why am I forgetting the name of it? The
Association?
The association,
Mhm.
yes. Do you have a
I
back
do.
and forth where others and you
Yes.
get that information? And at this time, did you choose to do it this way because you felt it was more?
I actually followed the process I always use. So now I don't always submit written testimony to a subcommittee, but I've testified live several times. Right? I've always informed the board of an upcoming issue once I understand it, send them my opinion and analysis of it, seek feedback of it. I've often and consistently forward to the board communiques from the board association directly, my interpretation of it. And so the procedure is it's an ongoing thing with all of us directors with the Board Association. And by the way, we all disagree sometimes
Mhm.
in that realm, and there's still a position taken, right? And so, it's prudent to say, don't do something instantly unless it's needed, right? I don't have any problem as an employee of the board and representing the county that before any official written testimony is given anywhere with our letterhead on it, having the board being able to have a discussion on it. It just means there'll be at times where we may not be able to do so because of timing, which is totally fine. We don't have to take the lead on every issue, right? So I personally have no problem with any direction from the board, but specifically if it becomes official, like you're submitting the testimony to a subcommittee and you all haven't had a chance to talk about it, I'm okay with that parameter for sure. That doesn't bother me at all. I will say that I have to have regular conversations with legislators all the time. And if I had the constraint that I had to clue in the board every time I'm doing that, I could do that, but it would really significantly hamper my ability to perform in that way.
And I don't think that's necessary.
Okay. But I understand the issue, hence why I actually asked to put it on the agenda. And I actually drafted a draft policy to have you look at, that basically says, hey, when it gets down to official, and I did put in an emergency clause, but the emergency clause on timing really, to me, understanding a little bit more about how things actually work in the legislature, nothing's really urgent until it's urgent.
And this comes down to an emergency is different in your mind than it was in mine.
Yeah, and there's in my opinion, there's a reason why, and this is going to sound very grandiose, and I apologize. There's a reason why the other 45 didn't submit. They used my submission. And I know that for a fact for the majority of them. They didn't need to. So that's okay. I don't want to be an island either, because it is officially in the record, the only one, right? And the Board Association could work on our behalf on that in those cases. So I am perfectly, obviously, I think it's a legitimate restraint when it comes to, hey, you're going to actually submit it or go and testify. We have to have some discussion. So, because I wouldn't have to have unanimous approval of this board.
Right.
But clearly, if the majority of the CMH board says this is not the position that we want you to take on this bill, or we're not sure or neutral, yeah, I believe that's the appropriate procedure. And I don't think we're going to have many of these, because I am very proactive in keeping this board informed of all of this stuff, to the point where it's like I have to make sure I'm talking about stuff internally at Ottawa CMH. So I appreciate this discussion, because that's what I'm needing is the scope. It's not personal. It's just, hey, how do you want to handle it?
And Jordan, you're in a super unique seat. I mean, literally, right?
Mhm.
I don't even know if there have been other commissioners on the board who also have a job like.
It's rare.
Jordan. Like to Sylvia's point, I don't know what's going on that quickly in Lansing. You'd have that purview. And so it's a really unique spot to be in.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
I'm not trying to be like simple. It's just a super unique seat. And so
Yeah.
in a way, it kind of goes back to just a conversation a few minutes ago of conflict of interest almost. You heard it first before any of us would, because you're involved in it. So I'm not sure what the answer is. I'm just saying you're in a unique position.
Yeah.
But I also trust Michael, who's always going to have the best interest. And I trust that for the last, how long have you been here? 1.5 years, 2 years, 3 years? I don't remember anymore. You've been
2
fighting your
years,
buns-
end of July.
fighting your buns off for Ottawa County. So you're in a unique spot. And
A simple procedural step for me could have alleviated the majority of this, but I'm glad that it occurred to help shape the role and function of the expectations to me. And this is how you handle things in a healthy way,
Mhm.
right? Now, um,
I guess the question is, do you feel like you have guidance?
I do. What I take away is this, that continue the usual process that I do of keeping the board informed, but when I'm going to take the step of submitting something formally, either in person to a legislative body or in writing on behalf of us, that the full board has to have the ability to discuss it first. And if there's some emergent thing like, oh, by the way, I just found this out and tomorrow's the day, then I'll send out communication to the board to say, should I just like not show up? Or is this okay enough for me to go, right? Because that was the only issue that, maybe not in this case, but in the future could happen. Because I do have a particular skill set that I articulate in a very specific way that some other folks can do and some other folks can't do. And I feel like it's my job to do so. But that's how I'm taken away. But definitely if it's a formal, yeah, absolutely. It's just that time, and I'm okay, like, well, you don't have to always be the one. You can wait until we can meet.
Now,
You know.
there's a caveat here.
Right.
We have to be very careful under the Open Meeting Act that you don't solicit opinions and make a decision based on collective board action electronically outside of an open meeting. So I think
Sure.
you did the appropriate thing. You created a position paper when you first became aware of the bill. You analyzed it, you sent it out to the board members and said, tell me what you think. We were free to individually submit comments to you if we disagreed or if we thought you were off base. I don't know if any of us submitted an acknowledgement to you. I think some of the board members conveyed a positive response.
Sure.
But you're in a situation where I think you're better off placing yourself in a position of being criticized for doing something than being criticized for doing nothing.
Correct.
And
But I don't have a problem, Chairman Byrd, with when it's an official action, like what we're talking about, to wait. I have no problem with that. If I feel like I can't wait, then I'll make that known. And even then, the board can say, well, you may feel that way, but it's really okay. Just sit this one out, so to speak. Unless I think it's such a fundamental threat, I'll inform folks and then I'll deal with the consequences. But I don't have a problem as the general approach to this, that anything formal has to be, position on this has to be acknowledged and talked about here. And there's going to be very few instances, Chairman Byrd, where this is like it's an instantaneous response needed, right? Because, Director Georgesmer brings up a very good point. I can always use the board association to convey that. And that was the one piece that, okay, right? They were asking me to give them something. So I needed to turn that around in the future. If it's really something like, well, you go ahead and use it, but it doesn't have to be identified as Ottawa County's official position on House Bill 6022. So I see the wisdom in that.
And I completely agree. And I think just to make it super clear that it should be, unless the board has a chance to meet, that you'll never take official action unless it's through the association.
Sure.
Because in those emergent instances, that's why we have an association, right? Can't see ever something coming up where written testimony is required from Ottawa County CMH. So,
Yeah.
but through the board association,
Yeah.
that makes sense. And I don't have any problem with
Yeah, and I don't either. What you're suggesting isn't, I will say the board association asks us to do that. So, and I'll have to talk to them based on this discussion and saying, and they do actively call for, please contact your people, please submit something written, please come and testify, right? Because they view it as soon as they start talking, some of the committee members like, here we go again, the board association is just going to do X, right? And so I think it's good for me to talk to them to say, be aware of this dynamic, but you're going to have to represent us because that's what, by the way, we pay dues for you to do. So be careful with overly soliciting your CMH partners to go there and do it. I know it was very effective, and I think this board doesn't have a problem with me going before subcommittees, as long as you're aware of it and we're okay with what I'm going to say, that it's very effective, right? But in addition to the Board Association, and I was leading that effort with the Board Association on the latest round of the PHP stuff. But I was also calling for dramatic reform internally. But I think the premises I'm walking away with are very sound to me. Don't do anything official unless X happens. And if it's an emergent, use the Board Association so that you have time as a board to discuss it so that we don't violate any, because the electronic method that I was utilizing, what I'm hearing is you might not have been able to avail yourself to an opinion that way. And I didn't know, and see, I didn't know that. And so I should have, but I didn't. So now that I know that, the only thing you can say is, really, this looks good, or I have some questions, just can't wait until we discuss it. If I'm understanding what the direction here is. And knowing that, I can easily change the process in what I do to ensure that we're not submitting an official position before on legislation or, without your, so I don't feel like it restrains me at all under those guidelines at all, because what I'm also hearing is that you want me to continue to do so, to stay active in that realm. Some CMH directors don't.
I think it's part of your job.
Yeah,
I agree.
right. So, but that's why we wanted this here, so that I can get I feel like I'm leaving with a parameter that I think is, unless you all, I can obviously work within that.
I still think it's appropriate for you to contact, so when a bill comes out, there are people who have sponsored it. I still think it's appropriate if you have a significant concern to
Sure.
directly contact the sponsor of the bill
Yeah.
and communicate that concern with them. That's not official record.
Yeah.
So I think you can use your voice in that way, as well as with CMH
Yeah.
Association.
Attempt with the sponsor, but my experience is the sponsors, it's the other people around the sponsor that are just as effective to know that's
Yes.
on that committee, because the sponsor is sponsoring it for legitimate reasons from their perspective.
So perhaps
perspective.
it's the committee members
Right.
at that point, but.
Yeah. And so there is, and then I'll convey this to the Board Association. We got to the field, and I can show the board if they want, direct email saying, contact other committee members. Dear Dr. Bashirs, do you know somebody? These people are in your area. Contact them. And I did, and I let all of you know, right? And so I'm going to have to work with the Board Association to understand this dynamic, that when you do that, there's some extra considerations and barriers to that have to be vetted with some of you, so that you're not blindsided with, why are you calling this person down the street? I try to tell you and telegraph that stuff. And I guess what I'm validating is that within our Board Association structure, there's an inherent tension that their official role is their official role, but they're constantly telling us, go do A, B, and C. And it's I usually push back on that end when I'm looking at what they want us to do and say, well, let me look at the thing and go through it and quickly do it, which I spend a considerable amount of time in the evenings reading. But there's that tension there. And I didn't hear today, don't do that, but we just have to make sure if we're submitting an official anything, verbal testimony, written testimony about a bill, this body has an ability to discuss it first. In person is what I'm hearing. And that's fine with me. I mean, it's got to be fine, but it's totally legitimate to me.
You can get opinion beforehand. We just can't have a collective opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you send stuff out to us, and I'm not saying that you should tally a vote this way or anything, but when you send stuff out to us, we probably should more often respond individually back to you instead of doing reply alls.
Yeah, and I'll mark them, but I send you people so many things.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm like Hamilton in the music, I'm writing all the time, okay? So I'll make sure it's more, This is the one, like, if you're prioritizing which of the 11 documents, I think I've sent you 4 this week, right? Documents, this is the one, hello, like, please look at this. 'Cause like, as I write stuff, I keep you informed, even position papers that are 10 pages, so.
I don't know that any of you got it. I know Dave probably got it. We got an alert from the LRE to contact our legislators to do.
Right.
So the CMHA was indicating that it was an emergency.
Right, exactly, right.
And that was, that's part of the,
But the formal action, I understand.
which is
We-
separate from, yeah, I get it.
Well, while we're talking about public communication, in the past, we have encouraged the board members to not speak directly with the press if they are contacted, but to direct them to either me or Michael. Is that a policy that we'd like to continue? You don't have to speak to it today, but if you have a particular opinion on that, let me know.
On bills,
On any-
legislate,
On anything.
on anything, that would be,
Meeting with the
that
board.
would, I talk to the press all of the time.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys, yeah, all right, yeah, all right.
Yeah, just so we can present a unified approach. Now, with that in mind, when you sent the email out requesting that anybody who knows Nancy, could they reach out to her? I sent an email to Nancy as board chair, encouraging her to respond to your request for a meeting because this was a bill that had potential impact on the consumers that we serve. And I thought she should discuss it with you. She didn't respond to my email or my phone call to her office. But was I out of line in doing that? Is that an appropriate outreach?
I don't think you were out of line doing that. Same with the press. I mean, I might have to think about it a little bit more, but I think there's a difference, talking to the press. I mean, like Sylvia and I probably occasionally get people reaching out
Right.
because we're county commissioners.
Funny because when people come up to me and ask questions, I say, I can't talk about this stuff with you.
Sure.
This is information that, like, I won't tell you. So even if you could keep proceeding to asking me, I won't tell you. So
Sure, yeah.
CMH and ask, like, oh, I don't care. But you can't, I'm not gonna say a word. So even if it was okay, I'm still not gonna say a word because that's private information and I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah, private information. I totally,
I,
totally agree. But I think as long as you're making it clear, you're giving your opinion or not speaking on behalf of the board.
Right.
I don't necessarily have a
Important.
problem with it. We had that discussion a lot on the commission.
I would never speak to the press on your behalf, but I also reached out to Nancy and didn't get any reply either, so. Just saying there's a bunch of us that tried.
Yeah. And, it's just to understand it, but,
Sylvia, you mentioned in our last finance committee that we really want to engage the legislature. And so we got to find a way to engage around these kinds of issues because sometimes I don't think the language is the same and the understanding is the same. And somehow if we can have a forum with the legislature, right, or get legislative updates as committee members or board members, I think that would be really helpful. I think we need to build bridges.
Well, Nancy also does office hours fairly regularly.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's monthly, but every other month.
So, and I'm not talking necessarily about Nancy, I'm talking about all of our legislators in regards to, and I know time is a limit, but it seems to me that we want to talk apples to apples.
Right. Yeah, we were talking, Jordan, about possibly setting up some sort of a legislative forum for the legislators, like in the greater West Michigan area, just where we could just come in and talk CMH, because it's such a complex system. I think it'd be helpful, and maybe legislators can share too, like what their thoughts are on, what they're seeing, because they're hearing from families and seeing things, from budgetary, perspectives and stuff too. So we were just thinking it could be helpful. So.
Sylvia, do the county commissioners still have quarterly meetings with legislative delegation they used to do that, and the
Mhm.
various departments were invited to participate.
Yes, they do. It's not the full Board of Commissioners, but usually it's, board leadership has meetings with the state legislators and
Yeah,
stuff,
they do that, and they also do legislative forums.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking of.
the bigger
Every
ones.
6 months or
Yeah.
something.
Mhm.
Maybe it's a quarter. I don't think it's quarter though. But that's when, yeah, township
Yeah,
and city folks will come to that one too. They do still do that.
and that's usually the legislators presenting
Yeah.
and, people asking questions.
Yeah, I've been, in the past, I've attended those with my role on the road commission, and it was always a good opportunity. Uh, I- It was the sort of thing where, because of my interest in CMH, was, okay, let's talk road commission, now let's talk CMH. And hopefully you're being made aware of those.
Oh, absolutely.
opportunities.
We could probably talk to Patrick about getting the CMH board, because road commission members they are invited, I believe. So maybe we could get the CMH board invited
Yeah.
as well.
That'd be
Good
great.
idea.
Okay, any further comment on that? Do you want any further discussion on the bill? Or do you want to do that at a future date?
What's that, really at your,
Merits of the bill or lack of thereof?
Happy to talk about the merits of the bill, but if we're not going to take a official position, I certainly don't have to. It's been
I-
a pretty robust discussion already.
Maybe we could put that on the agenda for next month's meeting.
sure.
With the budget hopefully passing next week, I don't think that it is highly unlikely that it will get another vote before our next meeting. So
Okay, and any further discussion on role and function of the CEO and board in addressing legislation? Have we beat that horse to death?
Appreciate it.
Related to that, though, I was going to bring it up under general comments. The executive committee is charged with conducting a review for Michael, which is due, I think, November 1st. We have
Right.
lots of time, but my intent was hopefully during July, follow that process. Last year, we did a very detailed survey of all the board members. Is it your desire to do that kind of a survey this year, or do you want to do a more general comments from board members to the executive committee as we prepare a review of Michael?
Survey.
In detail or
Is it-
general?
Do you have the same survey?
Yeah, we could do the.
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
What, let me just ask, what was the participation rate in terms of,
It was full.
was it a full participation?
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
all the
Mm.
board members.
Was the feedback helpful?
Some of the categories were kind of like NA.
Yeah,
I remember it was kind of like, well, we just started and
Mhm.
we haven't really talked about that, but yes, it was helpful. So, maybe looking at some of the categories to see, because it was a pretty, structured questionnaire.
Want to streamline it.
You can take, but I felt it very helpful.
okay, well, we'll go ahead and try to get that out to everyone. And the way we did it last year, Amanda sent it out to each of us. We responded, sent them back to Amanda. It was anonymous. I didn't know who submitted what information as we compiled it all. So I think that's a good way to get accurate and
And she doesn't give me access to the data.
right.
It sounds so disappointed.
You write this, probably be more critical of myself than you will, but
The other item is committee assignments. I made a mistake when we had our organizational meeting in April and elected board officers. I neglected to follow up on how we handled the committee assignments. I allowed them to simply continue into the next year. And I would like to address that and say that if there is anyone serving on either the Finance Committee or the PQI Committee who would like to not continue to serve, you have an opportunity to speak up and say, I'm willing to relinquish my seat for someone else. And then if there are board members who would like to serve on one of those committees, some of our board members serve on two committees.
Right.
Bob and Sylvia both serve on both committees. So, you know, if
Bonnie.
that's,
I do.
I'm sorry, but yeah, but, Bonnie, if that's overload and you prefer to not be on both, you know.
Yeah, to me, Tom, it's less about overload, for me at least. It's really more about engagement of as many board members as we can into the process and not having the overly centralized roles. So I would be willing to step off the finance committee if someone wants to step into the finance committee. I would like to stay on the PQI committee though.
Mhm.
But I would serve if no one else wants to.
And Bob, you stated it well. That's how I was feeling too, being on two committees. I would be willing to give up either one if there is someone who would like to step up to either one. I was first thinking the PQI, but truly, if there's someone who would like to step up to finance, I would remain on the PQI. So just wanted to put it out there.
How long do those meetings typically take? I know that's
2 hours, usually 3 to 5.
What, finance isn't fun?
No.
No. I love sitting there for 2 hours in my afternoon.
Well, bear in mind that under an authority status, the finance committee may have a longer agenda.
What?
I'll make sure that doesn't happen.
I'd be willing to sit in on the finance committee, but then I'd be on the
Okay.
PQI and finance, so, but I'd be interested in it, so.
Especially because we have all these new dashboards, Director
More
Duff.
than happy to have Director Duff take my position on the finance committee.
How many are on the QI committee? How many are?
Four plus the board chair. So right now, finance committee is Bob, Sylvia, Donna, Bonnie, and me. And the PQI is Bob, Peg, Paul, Vonnie, and me.
Oh, wait a minute. Beth isn't here. So isn't that what happens?
That's exactly right.
We could
When you're not
save
here.
this for, now that we've talked about it, we
Yeah.
can save it for deciding on things.
Yeah, why don't we just vote
Okay.
on it next month?
Yeah.
Great. And then with that, if there's any, whether there are changes or not, after next month's board meeting where we see if there's any changes, we'll ask those committees to reaffirm the selection of a chair, because technically that should have been done back in April. Okay, thank you. Any public comment? Have another opportunity for public comment?
Did you skip over general?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm sorry. General information, comments, and meetings attended.
I want to tell you about a little success story because you were talking about success stories early. My son is a consumer of CMH. He goes to MOCA, which has a contract with CMH. They go out in the community once or twice a day. His group goes to Fell in Love Farm every Friday and they volunteer at the farm. Well, my son was told on Wednesday that because of the upcoming 4th of July holiday, they would not be going there next week. And he got a little bit concerned because the MOCA staff have taught them the job that they do, to take pride in it, to do it well. And they told my son he's very strong. He does his job really, really well. He cleans out horse stalls. And he's very proud. Every day, Friday, when he comes home, he tells me how many wheelbarrow loads he has brought out to the pile. And so he asked me on Wednesday if I would bring him to the farm next week because they need him. So I said, yes, I will call. I will make sure you can go there next week because if they need you, you can, well, make sure you're there. So the MOCA staff have helped him learn how to be proud of what he can do, to take his task seriously. And at Fell in Love Farm, once they've completed their task, they get to spend time with their favorite animal. His is the big white dog, which is a livestock guardian dog, a great Pyrenees. Yep. Yeah. So, yeah.
Thanks, Peg.
We had a win too. A young participant came up to him yesterday and he was so excited. He got a job at Jimmy John's doing food prep. or something.
Yeah.
But he's at Jimmy John's and he's so excited, and those little wins are so ginormous in their life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, congrats.
We heard a presentation at, I don't know if it was I think it must have been one of our subcommittees for the board, um, of a potential housing development that would go in behind, in a county-owned lot behind the CMH building.
Hmm.
And it would kind of be a partnership with the Children's Advocacy Center. And it's kind of intentional because there's CMH right there,
Right.
the clerk's office, you know, the police station. It's in walking distance to West Shore. So we're excited about that. It's very early stages, but you know, that could be a potential opportunity. We're trying to build housing and especially accessible housing. So that,
Integrated housing.
Yeah,
that could be
Anna's
done.
already working on it.
Yeah, so keep you posted and Michael can keep us posted too.
Who's proposing or developing that, Jordan?
It's a county-owned property.
Okay.
So the, Paul Sachs, our
Mhm.
Director of Strategic Initiatives, is the one who presented the idea, but there's going to be a lot of partners involved if it does
Sure.
move forward.
Exciting.
Hmm.
And we need it.
Yeah, it could be great.
Oh,
I just wanted to report that I recently attended the CMH, the Board Association Conference, the summer conference, and somehow I got nominated and appointed to the Contracts and Financials Issues Committee. So I
You're
will be
welcome.
the board representative from Ottawa County there. So thank you, Michael.
congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Paul stepped up and did it, which, since I've been back, last couple of years, I noticed that these appointments and at the Board Association are not as robust as they used to be. And so when we were in this regional breakfast and they were asking for nominees, I was staring intently at Director
Mhm.
Duff, who then said, okay, I'll do it, because one of the strategies that we have to get more involved and strengthen some of that stuff. And knowing a lot about Director Duff, he's going to represent us really well. So I appreciate you doing that.
Now, Paul, you also went to a workshop on board dynamics.
Sure.
Do you have any insight on that to share with us? What did we do wrong today?
Yeah, unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot that had come out of that because the presenter wasn't well informed about how the board assignments are made in the state of Michigan. And so there was a lot of questions. There's some materials I can share with you though, that might be somewhat helpful, but I was a bit disappointed in that.
I'm the director on the Member Services Committee at the association, and we just voted now that we get to vet that committee, all of those things to ensure that the presenters are actually presenting with the knowledge base that they have. And so I got that with the committee passed based on some feedback from other members of the committee. And so we'll be looking at each of those sessions, like, are they really doing what they, and for 7 years, I did all the ethics training for board members through the association back in the day when they had a robust board works in-person survey. And so I kind of got us going, on that.
Any other comments from board members? Donna?
I attended the millage education
Yeah.
session at Georgetown yesterday. There's a great PowerPoint that goes over the whole program and really, really is good. And so I would encourage anybody to attend any of the other ones that are going on. It can be really helpful.
Is it on the website?
It is.
Yeah.
And there's one coming up at our offices.
I forget the next,
Spring Lake is
Spring
next.
Lake's next, then our offices.
Yeah.
Well, I've sent an email out yesterday to all you with the
Good.
dates and stuff. And the county commissioners, because, if we're in their area, you might want to stop by. So,
And Donna, you have publicly announced that you are retiring.
I am 20 years
Congratulations.
for the organization, and I've been coming into grandparenthood, and I have
Oh.
who's coming soon with makes 5. Taking care of my dad, and then to what we talked early on, my son is 34, and I need him to be able to live independently. better than what he's doing right now. And that just takes time, right? I need to spend time with him and just, different part of life.
Yeah.
So, but I love what I do and I love our families to the moon and back. And it'll be a hard day on December 31. That's kind of my end date. We're starting launch now of a new executive director and I'll onboard and train that person. But yeah, it's time for the next part of life and see what God brings next. So.
But you're
I'm
not
excited.
retiring from the board. of
Pardon
CMH.
me?
You're not retiring from the
Oh,
CMH.
Not going anywhere.
I mean, I was like, wait, you're leaving us here?
No, I'm not leaving you guys, just the other part of life. So thank you. Yeah.
Okay, any other comments? If not, we will move to the public comment officially. Anyone wish to speak? Anyone online who hasn't fallen asleep? Then absent anyone wishing to continue our meeting, we will call the meeting adjourned.